living alone can have a variety of connotations. For some, it represents freedom and financial independence, the opportunity to avoid having to make compromises. However, for others, living alone may be synonymous with loneliness and isolation within society. These top 10 countries have the highest percentage of people who live alone, whether by choice or by necessity. Brazil. The Brazilian Amazon rainforest famously houses the most isolated man on the planet. As of 2007, the government enforced a 31-square-mile radius around him as a no-logging zone. Although he is safe from developers who may wish to destroy his forest, the man is thought to live in complete isolation. Although others in Brazil obviously don't live in such extreme solitude, there's a surprising rise in the numbers who now opt to live alone. There have been negative consequences for the infrastructure, as consumption of water and energy increases. Kenya. Back in 2005, the United Nations wrote on the increasing instances of older people living alone in Kenya. Many live in squalid conditions, as they slowly become unable to run a home. The Kenyan government launched the Expanded Social Protection Plan to provide over 65s with Sh2,000 each month. This may help those living alone financially. However, retirement homes are still not an option for the majority of Kenyan citizens, so loneliness in old age continues to be a pressing problem. South Africa. Population in the South African country has risen by nearly 10 million in the last decade. It's surprising that there's the space for those who opt to live alone. Although the housing market appears to be slowing, having dropped significantly in 2008, with more and more citizens deciding to live alone, the demand for properties is unlikely to wane significantly. Russia. The choice of many young Russians to live alone in their 20s has contributed to a stabilized population of around 150 million. Many chose to live alone and focus on building their careers, prioritizing making enough money to support a family before looking to start one. Young professionals in Moscow particularly feel the pinch if they decide to live alone, as the city has been ranked as having one of the highest costs of living in the world. Canada. In the past few years, the increasing number of Canadians who live alone has preoccupied the country's newspapers. Some understand this rise in single-occupancy dwellings to demonstrate an increasingly independent and financially secure population. However, others speculate that this shift in living arrangements reveals an erosion of society. One reason suggested for this change in living habits is the increasing divorce rate and declining marriage numbers. Others have speculated that a rise in social media has allowed people to live alone without feeling lonely or isolated. America. Although those who immigrate to America prefer to live in multiple-person dwellings, American-born citizens appear to favor living alone as soon as it's financially viable. Americans are marrying later and living longer, so the potential for living alone during adult life has significantly increased over the past decade. Manhattan and San Francisco, consisting of over 40% single-person households, showing that across the country Americans just want their space. Italy. Given that such a high proportion of Italians live alone, it's no surprise that loneliness has become a problem for the country's citizens. The spread of Italy's population is vastly uneven, and almost half of all citizens live in the Po Valley. Even in the densely populated areas, housing prices have dropped significantly in the last few years. This drop in prices allows those Italians who may have wished to live alone, but had been limited financially, to get their foot on the property ladder. Japan. The average number of people per household in Tokyo has now dropped below 2. This makes the city of Tokyo the most deserted city in the world, as the majority of Tokyoites live alone. This change in lifestyle over the last few decades has seen the Japanese government face new challenges, as the demand on resources per person swells. In Japan, the single occupancy trend correlates with a decrease in marriage, and Japan has been listed as the country that has less sex than anywhere else in the world. Britain. In modern times, long-lasting marriages in Britain are declining. This has made the number of people living alone in the UK to increase. There have been complaints by some that those living on unemployment benefits chose to live alone as opposed to with a partner, in order to secure extra benefits from the nation's welfare system. Brits often seek independence as soon as they can, to buy a place to live, and living alone in the 20s. This has become common among young people who are financially independent. Sweden. Living alone in Sweden is arguably the norm, because the option is so readily available. There is an abundance of affordable single-occupancy apartments. However, there are problems attached to this lonely way of living. Because of the single-person trend, or Fardnapen, has been set up in Stockholm, a community-owned collective house. The concept allows Swedes to have their own apartments, and easy access to communal spaces. It does show the innovative solutions, which are being devised for an increasingly lonely population.